Can you run a car fueled by vegetable oil?
Yes, I can.
Can you use granite powder to increase the power of hydraulic turbines?
Yes, I can.
Can you convert marble waste into construction material?
Yes, I can.
When young minds are determined to explore new heights of modern technology, a new world order begins to take shape. The city of Jaipur is a towering symbol of a rich heritage of engineering and architecture. And transforming tradition into technology is MNIT Jaipur. Inspired by the legendary educationist and freedom fighter, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, MNIT Jaipur began as a regional engineering college in 1963 and later emerged as an institute of national importance under the Government of India, Ministry of Human Resources Development. With a glorious legacy behind it, MNIT Jaipur in recent years has entered a new trajectory of growth, transforming into one of India's top-ranking national institutes of technology with a growing global recognition. A campus spread over 320 acres. Hostels to accommodate nearly 5,000 students. Rows of bungalows and modern apartment blocks for faculty members and staff. An academic block with modern laboratories to facilitate advanced study and research in multiple domains of technology. A confluence of various engineering disciplines imparted by 13 departments and 8 centers of excellence for undergraduate studies and 27 specialized programs for postgraduate and doctoral studies. At the center of MNIT's campus is Prabha Bhavan, a green building with its energy efficiency far exceeding prescribed norms. The Center for Advanced Design has 9 computer laboratories equipped with the latest design software and simulation tools for finite element-based design optimization and virtual 3D simulation. The National Knowledge Network is a multi-gigabyte IT backbone for educational institutions across India. The Vivekananda Lecture Theatre Complex is one of the most modern multi-storied learning centers in India, with a combined capacity to accommodate nearly 6,500 students, making it one of the largest academic buildings in the world. MNIT's Advanced Center for Materials Research is equipped with the latest state-of-the-art research facilities for the synthesis and characterization of materials, enabling interdisciplinary advanced research, including nanotechnology. This center is available to scientists, faculty, researchers of other institutes, as well as to industry at large. The Advanced Research Center for Tribology has one of the finest labs in the country, with cutting-edge technology systems for developing technologies to create long-lasting materials that offer high wear and temperature resistance and which result in energy savings. MNIT's Center for Energy and Environment provides specialized facilities for research and development in the fields of renewable energy, application of nanomaterials in solar thermal systems, and environmental impact and life cycle assessment studies. The Center for Development of Stones at MNIT Jaipur conducts research in the stone sector, as well as in gainful utilization of stone waste. In order to minimize the destruction caused by natural calamities, MNIT Jaipur has established facilities for disaster mitigation and management. At the Center for Steel, MNIT offers research in development of new and advanced types of steels. MNIT Jaipur has a full-time faculty strength of nearly 200 professors. They combine rich experience with a passion for research-based teaching. Adopting a student-centric approach, they help stimulate intellectual curiosity and inculcate a keen sense of innovativeness among students. Besides, regular fieldwork and educational tours make learning a very exciting and enriching experience for students. MNIT Jaipur adheres to stringent quality standards in education by adopting best practices in evaluation with a transparent grading system. The Training and Placement Cell provides personality development and communication skills. To develop sensitivity to social causes, MNIT encourages students to participate in community service by adopting backward villages to implement projects under the various national missions. The MNIT Jaipur campus is a home away from home for nearly 5,000 students hailing from different parts of India. There are 9 hostels for boys and 3 hostels for girls. Well-appointed rooms with a comfortable ambience and quality food make their stay here
Can you see my slides, by
extremely
the way?
memorable. Encouragement of sports and games is
Yes, I
integral
can.
to the holistic development of students.
You have to do full screen or
Yeah,
whatever.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
Annual sports events like
Just
athletics
put the title
ignite a
slide on.
passion for sporting among students.
We are just about to begin within few minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think some noise is coming from Shubhan's phone. Shubhan, could you check?
So is it
A
okay now?
full-fledged
Some spinning
dispensary
noise in
with
the
doctor
background.
and staff looks after the healthcare needs of students and staff members. 2 guest houses provide accommodation to visiting dignitaries as well as to delegates attending seminars and events.
I'm happy to know that the MNIT Jaipur recognizes the importance of close linkage between education, research and industry with the emphasis on development of leadership qualities. With a brigade of bright young men and women who have shown their academic excellence during this
It may be the background noise from someone else's PC.
I congratulate
Okay.
you on this happy occasion.
All of you, especially the students,
So it's better
are the
that we
leaders of
mute the mic.
futures.
Mr.
And all of you is going to be responsible to make this country better and brighter.
Equipment and facilities have been created in such a way that you can process the material here and then do the characterization. So you can indeed be a participant in the technology growth.
Today, MNIT Jaipur has become a hotbed of research and development. About 500 full-time research scholars, comprising 10% of the total student population, are pursuing research on the campus. MNIT's IPR cell files an average of 8 new patents annually. There are more than 4,000 research publications, including citations and faculty publications. Besides, MNIT also has nearly 650 consultancy assignments. There are 140 research projects funded by various government departments and ministries of steel, water resources, industries, renewable energy, etc. and international funding agencies like the World Bank, the European Union, UNICEF and the US Department of Energy, amongst others. MNIT has also forged partnerships with several leading industrial organizations to conduct joint research for industrial innovations. MNIT Jaipur has undertaken several international research projects by collaborating with reputed universities and institutes across the USA, the UK, Germany, Austria, Finland, Russia, South Africa, Australia and Japan, amongst others. Today, MNITians play leadership roles in the corporate world and in the government sector across India and around the world. To express their gratitude to their alma mater, several past students visit MNIT Jaipur every year on Alumni Day.
I studied electrical engineering. That's what they taught me in college. But what taught me in hostels is the culture and diversity of India.
MNIT provided me analytical capability, and it also gave me opportunities to develop my skills of handling people.
It has given me the right foundation and nothing that I can actually ever forget. So I'm always going to be in debt of this college and institution.
I'm so happy to see the great progress that MNIT has made. And we are seeing now one of the best NITs appear in the form of MNIT. And my friends, it's you who will be charged with building this great future of our great nation.
I can, yes, I can, we can, yes, we can, MNIT, yes, we can, we can, we can, we can, I can, yes, I can, we can, yes, we can, MNIT, yes, we can.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, the video is about to finish. Just a minute.
Sure.
Just be ready.
Sure.
Shubhan sir. Shubhan sir. Hello.
हाँ जी बताएं
Just be ready for the introduction.
I have to introduce.
Yes. So just be ready. Yeah? The video is about to finish.
I didn't. I was preparing the slides यार मतलब.
अरे तुम you are the best person to introduce Kousik sir.
I know, but I didn't.
You don't need any scripted thing, right?
Give me maybe 2 minutes or so.
Shubhanda, be ready. Shubhanda, be ready. Huh, okay.
We are setting up.
Okay, thanks. Shubhanda.
एक सेकंड दाঁড়াও मैं तो रेडी नई मगर
मतलब बोलने के 5 सेकंड बाद फिर से मेरे साउंड आ रहा है क्या? ऐसे गूगल मीट में कैसे नहीं होता?
किसी और ने स्पीकर जगह पे रखा होगा तो उनके पास पहुंच रहा होगा फिर उनके माइक से आ रहा होगा फिर उनके माइक से आ रहा होगा
तो स्क्रिप्ट तो मैं ही बोल रहा था शुभम का ये कर
So I'm ready now.
शुभन सर
I'm ready. Can I start?
तो आपका वीडियो नहीं दिख रहा है.
Oh, I have to be okay, I'm not actually really well prepared for this.
You are just looking like Marlon Brando. You know,
I always
like that. So we are about to go online.
ठीक है. So just tell me ready, then I will
within 10
go ahead.
Shubhanda,
ठीक है.
just
Shall I start?
you're ready to go.
Okay. So, so it is our great pleasure to invite our today's speaker, Dr. Kousik Samanta. Dr. Kousik Samanta graduated from Ramakrishna Mission Vidya Mandir, Belur, where he was my batchmate also, and then he went to do his masters from IIT Bombay. Then, then for his PhD, doctoral studies, he went to USA, Texas A&M University. Then he has done 2 postdoc fellowships from John Hopkins, and then Rice at UPenn. Then in 2014, he has joined IIT Bhubaneswar as an assistant professor. He is continuing there. So at this advent of COVID-19, the disease that has threatened humanity all over the globe, he is also interested in modeling these phenomena. So we will hear him at length today. Welcome you all. I extend my cordial welcome to all the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shubhan, for a nice introduction. Am I audible, by the way?
Yes, you are audible, very much audible.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, all the organizers. Thank the physics, let me thank the physics department at MNIT and the director and all the coordinating members for giving me a chance to speak out on this, the topic that is crippling the humanity. And this is a big problem that we are facing currently. So let us dig deeper into this is my topic, a hitchhiker's guide to estimating the span of COVID-19. So before I go into any detail, let me quickly explain the title, what I mean by that. First of all, I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a statistician. I'm a theoretical chemist. I work on quantum chemistry. But during the advent of this new disease, there was a need to basically estimate what is going to pan out, what the disease outcome going to be, how many people are going to be affected. And a lot of people are scrambling and to see how this can be done. So in that time, I found that there are a lot of models, computational models, who basically, the models that deal with some differential equation, ordinary differential equation, and they talk about the solution. At the same time, we had a group of at least 6 or 7 people at IIT Bhubaneswar who were interested and had the same kind of interest in modeling. So I joined the fray because what could be more difficult than solving a bunch of differential equations? Because that is what we have been doing as a theoretical chemist or theoretical scientist. So with that, we started our adventure. And I just want to, in this moment, I just want to share a bit of our experience in that. So we are still writing up those things. So I'm not exactly going to present what exactly we have found, because we haven't written that up yet. We are going to. So in this presentation, I'm going to share my experience in dealing with these things. All right, moving on. Okay, one other quick warning actually, is that I'm not going to tell you any groundbreaking new thing. My strategy here is to basically introduce different modeling strategies. So at the level of undergraduate students, or maybe a little bit higher level undergraduate student or graduate level student, meaning MSc or something like that, so that they can start this computational modeling themselves, or at least get a feel for what the models are talking about. Number one, and number two, whether they can find, if given a model, they can find the flaws in that. because nowadays in the newspaper, you'll see newspapers and all kinds of media, you'll see lots of noise actually with all these models. So this computational my motivation in this talk or to basically feel, give or convey some information to all of the people listening to judge, to assess whether and how much those models are valid and whether we can rely on them. So here's an outline of the talk. In the beginning, I'll give a brief introduction about the disease that is crippling us, or I think I made a quick mistake here, which should be COVID, and I is missing there. It's a novel coronavirus disease, and this is what we are up against. So we'll give a brief introduction. Being a chemist, I feel that I should give a bit of biochemistry in that. And then we'll talk about when is it going to be over? So this is the question that everybody has in his or her mind. So this is I embolden that thing to make sure that we stress on that one. And this is the main topic we'll be covering. So in the model, in this talk, after we talk a little bit about discussing how we can find out when it is going to over or can estimate when it is going to be over, we'll be talking about in these models or in these efforts, what exactly we are missing. And then we'll talk a little bit about where we can go from that point. So once again, so this is a gentle introduction to epidemiological modeling. And I hope that everybody can take away something from this talk so that they can appreciate and start to build models based on this. Okay, let's start. So before we begin, let me give a quick picture of what we are facing, okay? Just a bit of statistics. So you'll see in the newspaper and the TV, this kind of scary picture. So let me start with this one. This is from the dashboard from the Johns Hopkins University. They have done a beautiful, wonderful job with all these things. So in this picture, they have described which places are affected by the disease. So once again, I'm talking about the disease. I haven't spelled out the name yet. So let me spell out the name. It's novel coronavirus disease, or in shorthand, it's COVID-19. So these in the middle picture, the circles or the spots, red spots, indicate the places which are affected by the disease, or places which are crippled by the disease. Bigger the spot, bigger the size of the spot, bigger the number of infections in these places. So as of last night, we can see that worldwide we have about 10 lakhs or 10 million, I should say, or approximately 11 million, meaning 11 with 6 zeros after that. Those many people are confirmed to be affected by the disease. In US, you already see that close to 3 million. In Brazil, it's close to 1.5 million. In Russia, it's about 0.6 million. In India, it's about 0.6 million. We are going to soon become the third in the race. Let's hope that we do not race for the #1 spot. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see the number of deaths, which is also very scary. You can see that it's about 5 lakh or 0.5 million. So the number of deaths, in terms of the number of deaths, India is ranked low. Let's hope we stay low in that figure. Now, on the very bottom right corner, you can see the plot, which is basically total number of infections or cumulative number of infections. You can see that it's crossed the 10 million mark. It's heading toward 11 million by the beginning of July. So with that, let me move on to the next picture. So this is a quick comparison about the crippling effect of COVID-19 among different geographical locations. So this increases, these spikes or these bar charts indicates the daily new cases. And on the left corner of each plot, the total number of confirmed cases. In Americas or North and South America, it's about 5 million. In European continent, it's about 2.7 million. In Eastern Mediterranean, it's 1 million. In Southeast Asia, it's 0.8 million, or about 8 lakhs. And major contributor, I believe, is India, because India is already 6 lakh or 0.6 million. Excuse me. In Africa, it's about 0.3 million. In Western Pacific, it's 0.2 million. So I took these figures last night. So there might be a little change by the morning. And now coming to India, because we are placed in India currently, so we are more interested in the Indian numbers. So as I mentioned, in India, the situation is like this. There are 6 lakh or 0.6 million confirmed cases, and number of daily cases is gradually increasing. You can see from the bar charts, you can see the number of daily cases are increasing. Top chart, and by the last night's estimate is about 21,000. Yesterday, there were new cases of 21,000. And daily deaths is currently low, is half a thousand or about 500 every day as of yesterday. And except for a spike, the number of deaths is not increasing too much. Regardless of that, total number of deaths is 17,834. In the very bottom panel, I got the very bottom part. I got these numbers from the Government of India dashboard. So there are total 2,26,947 active cases. Active cases means from the confirmed cases, you subtract the number of cured and subtract the number of deaths. So those patients are still infected. Those patients are still suffering. So the total number of people we could cure is 3,59,859. And these numbers are from the last 2 digits are from the ICMR database. This indicates that samples tested and sample tested on July 1st. So testing wise, we are doing okay. In fact, we are doing good, but we should be doing better considering the huge number of population. Okay, so now we have seen the cold numbers. Okay, now let's see what we are up against. What is causing that disease? So let's start at the beginning. So the scientific consensus is that the disease COVID-19 has a natural origin. There are lots of conspiracy theories. Let's not spend time on this. Let's not speculate on this, because I believe there are not enough evidence to speculate on those. So when we have enough evidence, we'll talk about those. For the time being, the scientific consensus is that COVID-19 has a natural origin. So in the beginning, the infection started on December 1st. That was the first known case. And the origin of the disease is the virus from the bat. So the probable bat to human infection may have been among people processing bat carcasses and guano in the production of traditional Chinese medicines. The people who deal with the carcasses of bats and guano, they might have contracted this virus at some point of time. So that bat might have passed to humans directly or through some intermediate animals. So we have 2 cases actually, previous 2 cases with similar type of virus. The first one is SARS, which came from civet cats, and second one is MERS. It came to the camel, and we are not yet sure what is the intermediate animal for COVID-19. But anyway, the humans are getting affected. So that is the main thing. And one important point I should mention before I move on, the first patient who was affected on December 1st did not have a visible connection with the wet market cluster, which was very prominent later on. All right, so let's see what we are up against. So first of all, the virus, the official name of the virus is the novel coronavirus, or SARS-CoV-2, severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus number 2. So that means we already have a number 1, which is which affected us a long time ago, around 2004, I believe. And all of these viruses, they have the common characteristic is a crown-like structure. On the right-hand side, I drew, there is a picture of a coronavirus. You can see that it has a crown-like structure around it, and a few spikes are coming out of that. So those are spike proteins. They are called S proteins. So these S proteins are very effective in finding the ACEs protein, ACES protein in human body. And where are the ACES protein more dominant? They are more dominant in the airways of human bodies. So ACES2 acts as a receptor for the S protein. So S protein easily binds to that, and due to some evolutionary effect, this S protein in novel coronavirus is so much efficient in getting attached to the ACES2 and transferring its genetic material inside the cell that none of the previous SARS or none of the previous coronavirus come as close to this one. By the way, before this coronavirus, every year around November, December, the world is affected by the flu virus. Okay, so this is very common virus, common cold, and this also is a coronavirus. Okay, so this protein is very much evolutionary efficient to get attached to the ACES2 protein and enter the cell. Now let's see what happens when it enters the cell. First of all, we need to know what our cells do. We have in the cell, we have a cell membrane. Inside the cell, we have a cytoplasm. Inside the cytoplasm, we have nucleus, ribosomes, and all the things. What do? They synthesize proteins. And how do they synthesize protein? We have a DNA blueprint. From the DNA blueprint, from DNA comes RNA. From RNA, the protein synthesis happen. This is called central dogma of life. Okay. Now, what the viral RNA does once it enters, it basically poses itself as a human RNA. So human cell gets kind of misled and tries to make copies from this viral RNA. So instead of producing the necessary proteins for human life, they produce the necessary things for the RNA of the virus. And the virus makes the cell work so hard, it basically colonizes the cell, that the overworked cell ultimately dies. Before the death of the cell, a plethora of new coronavirus are generated, and they are ejected from the cell, and they come out from the cell and affect other nearby cells. And this process goes on from one cell to other, and gradually from airways, from air passages in the human body, it enters the lungs, and it affects the lungs, and it causes severe problem. Like first few symptoms are like coughing and a breathing problem. Once lungs is affected, there is a huge problem in breathing. So that is the first part of the problem, attack of the clones, when the coronavirus affects our colonizes human cell and affects our body. Second part is due to the human body. So when something happens to our body is very efficient to send signal to save those affected parts. This is called immune response. So does our immune response strike back? Yes, it does actually. But what happens in the beginning, this is a quite different from other viruses. In case of coronavirus, the certain level of instigator serum, I'll call instigator serum, which basically sends out the rescue or response team. In case of coronavirus, this signal stays high and stays up for a very long time. So as a result of that, the rescue team, which starts out to save the cells, that gets confused. There was a news article in New York Times. It says that it's like Usain Bolt hearing the starting gun again and again and again and getting confused in the way. So if the starting signal or the revolver, the shot from the revolver is only once, he will start immediately. Usain Bolt will start immediately. But if the revolver shoots again and again and again, he will get confused and he will not know which direction to approach. So as a result of that, our immune response is kinds of haphazard. It doesn't know which part to attack. So as a result of that, they cannot do a surgical strike. Although our immune response is very efficient in doing a surgical attack, but in this case, because of this confusion and muddle, they cannot do much, they cannot help much. So when the cell is affected to a great degree, then something very sinister happens. This is called cytokine storm. It's a do or die suicidal final counterattack by immune response system. So it's like that our body is very much affected. We have to do something now and now. So as a result of that, think of the lung cells are affected. So a lot of immune response cells or T cells are coming to save the lung cells. So as a result of that, because of this SOS, last minute SOS signal, the blood vessels will immediately get enlarged. So as a result of that, you can see that the blood vessels which are in the lungs, they can open up. So as a result of that, the lungs will be filled with a lot of fluids, blood and lots of other serum fluids from the blood. So blood, our lungs are not capable of handling that much fluid. So the lung is clogged. We have a breathing problem. We need ventilator at this point. So at this point, at this grim situation, now coronavirus starts to attack other body organs also. There is a recent report in New York Times that in Nature, actually, I'm sorry, the New York Times reported the scientific article from Nature. It starts attacking other human organs, including our heart also. So now let me before I move on, let me just quickly summarize what we have known so far. Where are we now? So we have seen the statistics. There are total 11 million people who are affected. Out of these, about 4.3 million are still active. They are still suffering. And out of those people, total deceased or dead are 5.2 million. There are huge effort going into developing new drugs for curing this disease, but there is no specific drug yet. Forget about coronal and all other things. They do not work yet. There is no proof. And other home remedies like hot water gargling, ginger, garlic milk, and all these things, they can alleviate the symptoms a little bit. If you have cough, they can alleviate the symptoms. But remember, they are not cured. We do not have a drug yet. Second, we do not have a vaccine yet. For other life-threatening diseases, we have vaccine, but we are not yet in a state to get a vaccine. There are some trials, but we are not yet in a position to get hold of a vaccine. And third point is that there is no proof yet of herd immunity. So what is herd immunity? Herd immunity is when a significant number of people are affected by the disease and they are cured. And they have the antibody to resist this virus. Then the population is no longer under the threat of the virus. So there is still no proof, by the way. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more on that. I think you have heard a little bit about or a lot about this from Indranil's talk yesterday, and we'll just not ponder over that. We'll just mention the in passing. Now, what works? We have found from the public health perspective, we have found that physical distancing, maintaining at least 6 feet of distance from each other, wearing masks, and maintaining proper personal hygiene seem to minimize the risk. Personal hygiene means washing regular hands, using hand sanitizer, and all those things. So still, the coronavirus is looming large. We have to see where we can go from there. So now everybody has this question. When is it going to be over? Okay, or is it going to be over? So on the get-go, let me tell you that I'm no Nostradamus. I have no predictive, I have no inbuilt capability. I'm not born with inbuilt capability to predict the future. Okay, and when is it going to end? It's likely to be over when we have the medical cure, like a drug or vaccine, when enough lives are lost to the ultra herd immunity. Okay, so that is when we are going to, that is when the disease is going to end. That is when the pandemic is going to end. But still, can we predict when it's going to end? Because that information is very important for the policymakers and government. Because based on that, they have to make decisions, they have to distribute the resources, and they have to take care of the people if the government is willing to take care of the people. And also, we are under lockdown and basically kind of confinement for a very long time. We also need to know when we can go back to normal life. Staying at home has become boring. So we have to find a way out of that. So can we find out when it is going to end? Now, let's see what are the means that we have at our disposal to look into the future. So clairvoyance is a passive, basically. So this is old-fashioned, and it doesn't work actually. Okay. So how do we know? How do we look into the future? So the answer to the question, I'd say, is cerca trova. Okay. So those of you who have read Inferno by Dan Brown must be aware of this term. It means seek and ye shall find. So where should we look? Look into the data, the available information that we have, and based on that, we can make a prediction, we can make a projection, what is going to happen. So in that context, we'll talk about computational modeling. So what does it do? Analyze past trends to get an idea about the future. Okay, obviously you can do it by hand, but you have to do a lot of repetitive tasks. You have to do a lot of things in loops, and we have, with the advent of a technology, we have become very lazy. Let the computer do that. Okay, so that's why we are talking about computational modeling. And the computational modeling applied to this kind of epidemics is called epidemiological modeling. Okay, so before talking about these computational models, let's see what the experts warned us about. So I have just put a few quotes from a number of statisticians who are leaders in their field in their own right. So first one is from a famous book by Barnum and Anderson. They said that a model is a simplification or approximation of a reality, and hence will not reflect all reality. Okay, so do not take the model as to be truth. They are basically a model of the reality in that sense. They are not reality. That you have to understand. And the most famous quote is from George Box. He said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. Okay, so in the very beginning, in the very first, let me tell you that all models they're making, they're all wrong. They are not reality. They're wrong in the sense they are not reality. But some are going to be useful, provided we know how to deal with them. And the next part of our talk will be based on how to basically deal with that. One other quick quote from Steele. He says that my maps are useful. Moreover, except for a few that are out of date, they're not wrong. So if we have a map, a regular geographical map, you know that map doesn't describe the parts on the earth. But using a map, you can do a lot of things. You can know how you can go from one point to the other. So in that sense, the models are useful. But do not think the map has the buildings and all the things. They do not have. These are only a way to useful in the sense that we can know from if we want to go from this point to that point, how we go and how much time it can take, that we can estimate. So that's where the models come to be useful. Okay. Before we talk about models per se, let me quickly talk about what exactly we are expecting from a model. Okay. So the most basic of these models is a compartmental models. It's called SIR model. Okay. So SIR has 3 compartments or 3 bags, you can say, just like these 3 bags of wool, basically. Okay, from the black sheep. So I'm giving a discrete version of the SIR model. There is a continuous version, but to start with, I think discrete model is very easy to understand. I think the audience will appreciate this discrete version. So first of all, let me introduce the terms. Here, the capital S indicates number of people who are susceptible. So people susceptible means it's not the entire population. Some people may have already inbuilt immunity who can never get affected. Okay. So in the beginning of this pandemic projection, there was a common consensus that you can take 30% of the people to be susceptible. So if India has some in billions of people, you can take just 30% of the people to be susceptible. So the idea was that the disease spread happens mostly in cities, okay? Because people are living in close quarters. So that is the main point where the disease can spread. So right now we're not sure. People are not sure how to find out how to extract the number of susceptible people from the total population. But regardless of that, susceptible means the number of people, the people who are likely to get affected. Second compartment is labeled as I, or people who are infected and infectious. Okay, this is a very simple model. We'll talk about modification of that one. So I means number of infectious people who can infect other people. And R is called removed people. So R is people who got infected, but they are either recovered or worse, they are deceased. Okay. So based on these 3 compartments, S, I, R, we can make the projection. And how does the model work? It simply connects the tomorrow's number of susceptible people as a function of today's number of infected people and today's number of susceptible people. You can see that on the n plus 1th day, n plus 1st day, the number of susceptible people is equal to negative of some constant times number of people infected on the day times the number of people infected on the number of people susceptible on the nth day. So if we know these numbers today, if I know I and S today, I should be in a position to tell you how many people will be susceptible tomorrow. So similarly, if I know the number of people of S and I for today, I should be in a position to tell you what will be the number of infected people tomorrow. And similarly, we will be able to predict R tomorrow. Okay. So you can do this in iterations, because when you know from today, if you know from tomorrow's data in the same way, you can extrapolate. to the day after tomorrow, and you can keep going like that. Okay, so excuse me. So you can see that using this kind of recursion, you can easily make a projection from the known data to the data in the future. So, so in the very bottom, I said, if I know the very first data, S naught, I naught, and R naught, and we know the parameters, beta and gamma, we should be able to make a prediction. And what is beta and gamma? Beta and gamma are the main parameters that we have to figure out. How do you figure out? So, I have devoted one part of the talk on estimation of beta and gamma, or all these parameters. But remember that that is one source of error, by the way. That is where people make mistakes. So that's why we should devote some time on that one. So to summarize this one, if we know the initial values of S, I, and R, if we know the parameters, we should be in a position to make a predictions in the future. We should be able to look into the future. Okay, now let us mind the gap. Okay, there is obviously some gap in this, and life is not so simple. Okay, so first question we should ask is we have to check, is the model reliable? What do you mean by reliable? Is the model applicable for this pandemic? We should not take the model from a different pandemic. We should be talking about this pandemic alone. Okay, so that means the parameters that we are talking about, they should be very specific to this pandemic. Now, excuse me, the model may not be specifically for this pandemic, but is it flexible enough so that it can be modified to fit this current pandemic? Okay, and also we should also remember that what are the limitations, what are the assumptions in the model. So let me just quickly point out the gaps in this model. Okay, so I'm just going back one slide so that just quickly point out to you the gaps. So you have realized that in whole process we have totally ignored the natural birth and natural death phenomena. Okay, so the one basic assumption in this model is that the number of deaths is exactly equal to the number of births. Okay, so we basically ignore those things. So that is the fundamental assumption in that one. But there are some works on this one, and people modify on top of this SIR model and include those parameters. All right. So with that, let me just equip or weaponize or help you with these parts of the questions. Okay. So whenever you see a model, you should ask these questions to assess the validity of the model. Okay. So first of all, what is the purpose of the purpose and the time frame of the model? So that means what exactly we are trying to figure out. You should not be taking a model that predicts the number of apples to predict the number of oranges. That doesn't work. Okay. And second, what is the context? So if you want to predict the number of cases or number of infection in the whole country, you should not be taking parameters from the state or from the district, or the vice versa. When you are talking about the district level situation, district level phenomena, you should not be taking about information from the country, the whole country wise, because if you take the data from the country wise, a lot of things are cancelled each other. Okay, so that is the context you should keep in mind. And also, whenever you see a model, a good model should outline all the assumptions. It should tell you that these are the results are valid under these assumptions. Also, a good model will tell you how the uncertainty is being calculated and displayed. What is the confidence level? How much confidence I can put in the model? Okay, so in the very beginning of the very beginning of the lockdown, there was a preposterous model from one of the renowned persons. Actually, they said I'm not going to name the person. They said that the pandemic in India is going to end sometime in the end of May. But what do we see now? That is still increasing in an alarming rate. Okay, so the bottom line is that the confidence level that he should have calculated and displayed, he might have calculated, people never paid attention to that. But those things are very important. And the last but not the least is what data are used for fitting the parameters. Okay, and we have to remember that there is certain uncertainty in the data also. Okay, so whenever you see a model, please ask yourself these questions to assess the reliability or predictability of the model. Okay, now this is other thing you should be aware of this. The limits of predictability. So you can let me read the things on the left hand side. So our knowledge of the virus is limited. Our knowledge of its transmission capability is limited. Our knowledge of immunity that we build up is very limited. We had a previous discussion with Dr. Mandal, actually, Shubhan, and he basically warned us that the data that we are, the immunity data that we are looking at, they don't be very reliable. People may be infecting other people for a very long period of time. And people starts to infect once again after a very prolonged period of time. So all those things should be kept in mind. So all those are limitations of the models, basically, that we should keep in mind. And one other thing that we have to rely on some database, like government database or people's word of mouth, that how many people are or have been affected, how many people are susceptible, how many people are infective, how many people are infecting others. So that means a huge effort has to be put in surveillance or contact tracing. And in a country as big as India, it's very hard to do that part. So now let's look at the picture on the right-hand side. So the picture on the left part of the picture, the left black cycle, indicates the initial condition uncertainty. So we start with some data, but there may be some uncertainty in the data itself. Okay, so instead of the red dot, we may have a big uncertainty, which basically ranges to this black circle. Now, if we have a purely deterministic model, like the discrete model that he showed, that you can go along this red line and make a prediction on the cross on the right-hand side. Okay. Now, depending all those choices of the parameters, depending all the prediction conditions, you can basically end up anywhere on this blue part on the right-hand side, the solid blue part on the right-hand side. And all those blue lines are basically the trajectories that will take you from the initial condition to the final conditions. So the only difference between these trajectories is the choice of parameters and choice of initial conditions. So once again, we should be aware of these ones. All right. So before I start talking about these models, let me just quickly point out the recent notable efforts in forecasting COVID-19 spread. Very early in February or end of January, Prem et al. And Prem and co-workers, they did a very fantastic study on this compartmental type of study. And that effort was followed up by Singh and Adhikari in University of Cambridge. And I still don't think that paper is anywhere in a peer-reviewed journal other than the archive. And then there is a report from Michigan group. And basically, these are in the context of India, by the way. I'm not talking about the world context. These are the modeling effort for the prediction of Indian cases. And the next one is Johns Hopkins groups. They also made some predictions into the Indian cases. And one notable effort from Indian scientists is the INSAI SAME group. There is a consortium of Indian scientists. They have made a tremendous effort on this one, and this is the website. If you want, you should look it up. Then the Prakriti model from the IIT Delhi group, and their forecasting model and all the things are there. And I should also point out one effort from MNIT itself. And this is the link to the publication. And kudos to all the efforts from COVID-19. And so because of these efforts, we can look into the future. We can get a window to see where we are heading toward. And I most likely, and mostly not most likely, it's a fact that I haven't mentioned most of the efforts, most of the effort. So you should look up this literature. You should look up the relevant literature to more about the efforts in this field. So with that introduction, now let me talk about the models. What kind of models that people build? Excuse me. There are two major types of models. One category is called mechanistic type, and other is called a typical forecasting model or phenomenological model. So first one is based on mechanism disease transmission. Just like compartmental type, the susceptible people get infected, and infected people either get recover, or they die. Okay, so based on this mechanism of disease transmission, these mechanistic models are devised. So I already talked about SIR. There are similar models called SIRT, ACIR, ACIQR, ACIQRD. So there is a whole bunch of names. Actually, we'll talk about that in a minute. Let me go to the other one, which is called phenomenological models, and these are based on the disease phenomenon. So they are totally based on fitting a well-known model, well-known equation to the available data. So it's statistical in nature and based on fitting to the available data. So notable examples are logistic, parallel logistic, and generalized Richards model. They have a common origin. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so this is the basically two main categories of these models, but there are hybrids also. We should keep these in mind. So to start, let me quickly talk about the mechanistic models. And excuse me. So we started talking about SIR model. So let's look into SIR model in a bit more detail. But in this time, I'll give you the continuous version of this one. Because as a scientist, I feel, especially coming from physics and chemistry background, we feel it's easy to solve continuous equation than discrete equation, because we have some handle over how we can solve the differential equation. We are very much trained in calculus and solving differential equations. So with that background, let me give a quick introduction. Just like the previous case, we again have susceptible S, infectious I, and R removed or recovered. Okay, so the total number of S, I, and R at any point is constant. So one other thing you have to remember, that the parameters beta and gamma that you're talking about in this continuous model may not be necessarily the same that we talked about in the continuous models. So continuous, in the discrete model. So the discrete model is a bit of approximation on top of the continuous model. Okay, or you can say that if you look into the large time frame, the discrete model becomes the continuous model. Okay, because the time interval between the two discrete steps becomes almost continuous. Okay, compared to the total time span. So in this continuous model, we talk about the rate of change of S, rate of change of I, rate of change of R, or ds dt, di dt, dr dt. Okay, so the rate of change of S is negative, once again a constant, times number of currently infected people, infectious people, times currently susceptible people. So n is the total population. We are basically scaling the beta with this n. So, so number of change of susceptible people is currently proportional to number of infectious people and currently number of susceptible people. Okay. So from this equation, you can see that number of susceptible people is gradually decreasing with increase of infected people. Okay. So infected people increases because of the more of the susceptible people become infectious. And the second term in the second equation, minus gamma times I, is basically indicates the removal of the infectious population due to death or recovery. So I hope that the model is clear to everyone. So you can see that if we know the initial values of I and S, and we should be in a position to do an integration. Let's say Runge-Kutta or simple Newton's integration. We can simply do this integration and do the make a prediction. Okay. So once again, as I mentioned, this is simple couple of ODEs, ordinary differential equation, and we all know how to solve this if we have some background in calculus in undergraduate level. I am hoping that that minimum background our audience are possible having. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you the techniques of numerically solving this one. I'm hoping that they can get those things from statistical packages like Python or R, or at least they can easily code them up. So with that introduction, let me see how a typical SIR model pans out. So once again, I have taken this from my very reliable source, namely Wikipedia. All right, jokes apart. I think this plot basically indicates how the different population of S, I, and R, they can change. So in the very left-hand side, when time is the beginning of the time, or beginning of infection, or beginning of epidemic, or beginning of pandemic, the initial population of the susceptible people is 500, you can see. So I'm not mentioning any unit. It can be 500 people, it can be 500,000 people, or 500 million people. Let's not worry about that. Let's see how the population is changing. This is the main purpose of this graph. Excuse me. So the yellow graph is the susceptible, how the susceptible people, the number of susceptible people are changing. The maroon graph is how the I is changing, and the blue is how the R is changing. So you can see that the yellow curve, or number of susceptible people, slowly decreases in the beginning. Then there is a sharp drop, which is mirrored in the sharp increase in the number of infectious people. Okay. So the peak in the infectious people, or maroon curve, it indicates the maximum rate of infection. Actually, at that time, the daily new cases is the highest. So now, when you cross that prime phase, the daily new cases gradually decreases because the number of the immunity might have increased, or because there are not many people to get infected. So this is the outcome that we are going to see. So if our pandemic can be modeled with this typical SIR model, this is how our outcome should look like. So the susceptible people will get a 0 finally. Number of removed people will reach to a saturation, and number of infected people will go to a maximum and then finally come to 0. This is the very ideal situation, by the way, and we are nowhere near that. So the situation, if the SIR model is correct, the situation we are at is before the peak of this I. Okay, so we are yet to reach I if the SIR model works. All right. So Now we talked about the SIR model. Let's look a bit of modification, a bit of improvement. So I am talking about, I'm introducing another element in this model, which is called exposed, or number of people who are exposed. They are carrying a disease, and but they're under incubation. They are not currently infecting, but they could be infecting, and there is a time lag, and this is called the incubation period. And for a disease like this, an incubation period is important. And this model typically also includes the natural birth rate, and the version of SCIR model that I'm introducing here. Here again, I'm taking the natural birth or death rate to be equal, which is mu. You can say that ds over dt is equal to mu times n, where n is the population. Okay, so increase of susceptible people due to natural birth is proportional to the number of population. That is very easy to understand. And the very last line, dRdt, is equal to some term due to infection minus mu times r, and that is the decay of due to the natural death. Okay, so in this model, this is the same as SIR type of model, except that we have accounted for number one, exposed population, and by that we included the incubation period. Okay, so let's not get too much entangled with all these parameters. So let's consider SCIR is just an improvement over SIR. Let's take things one step at a time. Okay, so this is, I have no intention to confuse you, but in the literature, if you look into the literature, you'll see so many terms related to this compartmental type of models. And I hope that whenever you read about this, you will feel familiar, that you at least heard these names somewhere, models, and you can at least start to grasp the basic idea behind them. So, so there are different types of terms. Let me go over the right-hand side column first. So as we talked about, S is susceptible, I is infectious, and there are two subcompartments under infectious without symptoms or without symptoms. Those are called asymptomatic, and IS are infectious with symptoms, and R is removed or recovered, and D is deceased, Q is quarantined, and H is hospitalized. And remember, different models try to define these terms differently. So if you are reading these models, please try to take a look at what these terms indicate. They may not be exactly same as the way I defined. For example, there are some models where D is defined as diagnosed, not as deceased. So please keep that in mind. So with those combination of letters, you can basically write a whole Shakespearean novel of models like SIR, SIRD, SCIR, SCIRD, SCIRHD, SCIRQD, SCIRHQD. So basically in all those models, all these different subcompartments or compartments are taken into account. So that is the key thing to remember. So there is one quick indication, digging a little bit deeper, how these individual models work. So right now I'm talking about the IND-SIM model of SCIR. So here, let's go to the picture on the right-hand side. In the very left-hand box, we have S, the number of susceptible people. They have a rate of being exposed, which is E. Rate of being exposed is beta, and that becomes exposed. And after some incubation period, they become IP or IA. IP is pre-symptomatic, and IA is asymptomatic. Okay, and they have different rate of conversion from E to IP and E to IA. And pre-symptomatic people can become mildly symptomatic or severely symptomatic. They have different rate. Now, severely symptomatic people has to be hospitalized, or they can be put hospitalized compartment with a rate of lambda s. And hospitalized people can become deceased with a rate of rho times delta. And from the hospital, they can also come back to become R. And from a different branch, you can see that from E to IA, exposed to asymptomatic, so becomes IA, and IA to recovered. So you may ask me the question, there may be other connections, other connection to other nodes also possible. But this is the model, so this is the fundamental assumption they started with. So these are the connectivities that they are talking about. Okay. So for example, a susceptible person cannot directly die. Okay. He has to go through different levels like this one. And a symptomatic person cannot die. Okay, he has to he can only recover. So these are the model assumptions you have to keep in mind. All right. So once again, do not get tangled with all these parameters. Just understand how the default compartmentalizations work. So this is the key message I'm trying to convey. Now, this is a humongous model from one of the Italian groups, and it was published in Nature Medicines. And they have, you can see that they have devised 1, 3 times 2, 6, 8 compartments. They have susceptible, they have infected, they have diagnosed, they have recognized, they have threatened, they have extinct, they have ailing, they have healed. So all those compartments they have, and they have taken all these things, they have connectivity with different, among the different nodes, and they're dealing with all these things. This is a humongous effort, and they published this in Nature Medicine in sometime in, I believe it's in May, okay, May 2020. So, so I think this is one of the grandest effort that we have made so far. Our colleagues have made so far. And this is from one of the Italian groups. So now we are talking about the projections, but there are some different intervention strategies also, how to take those into account, how to take into containment strategies into account. So first effort to account for this containment strategies is through contact matrices, okay? So the rates that we talked about, the beta and gamma and all these things, they are scaled by some contact matrices. Okay. So before I talk about contact matrices, let me quickly explain the figure on the right-hand side, the picture on the right-hand side. I'll call that a picture because I want you to appreciate this as a picture, not as an equation. Okay. Please do not look into this as an equation. Look into this as a picture. Okay. So what the picture says, that I have different age groups. Let's say the first age group, second age group, third age group, or something like that. So first age group can be the people aging with an age from 0 to 10 years. Second could be from 10 to 20 years. From next could be 20 to 50 years. Next could be 50 to 60 years. And the next group could be 60 to 80 years or something like that. So putting people in different age brackets, we can think about how different age brackets interact with each other, and how infection from one age group propagate from one to another. So I is in here one of the age group, and all these dots basically indicates the time derivatives. The ds over dt, I dot is di over dt, and r dot is dr over dt. So all of them indicate the rate. And the traditional SIR model, this is the slight modification for the traditional SIR model. Number one modification, we are talking about asymptomatic and symptomatic infectious people. Okay, and on top of that, we are considering the age subgroups also. Okay, now you can see that those parameters, the alpha and basically the beta, they are they are scaled by something called a contact matrix. We'll talk a little bit detail on that one. So Cij is basically how much contact the ith people in the ith age bracket has with people in the jth age bracket. So Cij indicates how many contacts a person from the ith age bracket has with jth age bracket. Okay, so once again, different age brackets has different these contact matrices, and depending on those, we scale these beta parameters. Okay, with these contact matrices. So this was first introduced by Singh and Adhikari actually in this paper, in this archive paper. Okay. Before we go into detail, let's talk a little bit about the age structure. I think we're running a little bit of low on time, so I try to wrap up with these things very quickly. So, so once again, as I said, please look into these as pictures. Do not bother about the equations. Look into these as pictures. So the first row is Indian picture, second row is China picture, and third row is Italian picture. This paper was basically put into archive in the very beginning of March, or I think somewhere in middle of February. I don't remember exactly. So the first column indicates the age structure. Okay, so you can see that in India we have very strong high population of the young people. In case of China and Italy, the population of old people are very high. So I'm basically reading the first column. Our population is like a Taj Mahal. For China is typical like a pagoda. Okay, you can see that the middle heavy. So that is a typical age structure, and based on that, people have devised these age structured contact matrices. Now let's quickly take about the second column. Okay, so in the first row, second column, this is a matrix. Basically, if I look at the this checkered diagram, the darker shades of blue indicate stronger contacts. Okay, so I don't have a pointer at this moment. So, but you can, I think you can visualize a darker shade of blue indicates stronger contact between the people in the age group on the x-axis and people on the y-axis. You can see that the second column is the household contact, and third column is the workplace contact. So workplace contact is more or less homogeneous among India, China, and Italy. But in Indian household, you will see that the contact with old people is very, very high in case of India. It has a kind of 5-layered structure in India. In other countries, it's more or less 3-layered structure. Okay, so that can play a crucial part in this kind of modeling part. So, so now we basically combine these different contact matrices to get a consolidated contact matrix. So first part is CH, second is CW, third is CS, fourth is CO. CA stands for home contact, CW stands for work contact, CS stands for school contact, O contains the work contact. So you can combine this together, and you can basically now use this Cij on the very left hand side to scale the infectivity parameter. Now, how do you take into account the various lockdown scenario? So you can further scale this work parameter and school parameters. You can see that in the second equation, I have scaled them with the U parameters. So U parameter is a tangent hyperbolic function, and which looks like something like this one. That is you can change these work contacts and school contacts in a tapered manner. So the key message from this one, without getting once again too much entangled in this equation, we can take into account how various age group and various social setup can interact with each other. Okay, so now let's face the reality. Once once again, they put this up in somewhere in March, I guess, in the beginning, and they said that by 13th of May, the pandemic will be over if we have a lockdown of 49 days, right? And now look at the figure on the very right-hand side, which I said reality. It says lockdown, phase 1 we had from 25th March to 14th April, phase 2, 15th April to 3rd May, phase 3, 4th of May to 17th of May, phase 4, 18th to 31st May. So instead of slowing down, we are keep going. We are going on in the same merry increasing trend. So let me, without throwing out the model, let me quickly talk about what the model predicts. It says the shaded portion on the very top graph on the left column is that if we have a 21 days, we will not kill the pandemic wholly. And since we open this up, there will be severe pandemic. The second row, the panel B, basically indicates if we have two lockdown temporarily separated. First one is 21 days, then 28 days. Then also we can increase. Third one is that first 21 days lockdown, 28 days lockdown, then 18 days lockdown. I'm talking about panel C. We can reduce the effect of this thing. And the last panel, the panel D, it says if we have a continuous lockdown of 49 days, we should be able to kill the spread of the disease. But that didn't happen. And I think Dr. Mukhopadhyay yesterday has outlined many reasons why we failed to flatten the curve. Flatten the curve means basically basically reducing the growth of the infections. He mentioned a few reasons. I'll not point those out because I don't want to repeat, but because that's a public health perspective. So without bothering about those things, let's say something not taken care of properly, and because of that, we are still in the increasing trend. So now we can ask, what is the point of modeling? Looking at this bleak and bitter reality, you can think, what is the point of reality? But I would say the model predictions are wrong, but still the age-structured ACR model has a lot of good features which we can imbibe. We can make a better model and make a better prediction because we have a lot of data right now, and we can go a lot far using those experiences. So we have a lot of data, we have a lot of experience. So that is what we can use. So quickly, let me describe the phenomenological models. And excuse me. So all of the mother of all these models is generalized Richards model. It comes from the early epidemic data, simply time series data. So we talk about the rate of change of total infections, which is equal to some rate constant, you can say. And if we do not have the square bracket, let's, for the time being, for the simplicity, let's say that if we do not have this square bracket, we can say that and P is 1. So right now we are saying the square bracket is 1 and P is 1. We can see that the rate of increase of cases is proportional to number of current cases, which is C. And using this P parameter, you can talk about the deceleration of growth. You can talk about the containment strategies. And A is basically epidemic turning point modulator, or when exactly we are going to reach the peak. And K basically indicates the carrying capacity or the size of the epidemic. So if we do the GRM, the generalized Richards models, is not, it doesn't have an analytical solution, but under certain approximation, like if P is assumed to be 1, then you can get the power law logistic model. If you assume P equal to 1, equal to 1, you get simple logistic model. And without bothering too much about the equation, because that's our philosophy, we'll talk about the pictures. So this is one of the pictures that we obtained from China. It's published in International Journal of Infections, and they showed that the saturation level of infection in China is around 80,000. And it's good to see because China is currently saturation, although we are not sure about the data that they have. But anyway, that's what they proposed. So once again, using this phenomenological model, you can fit the parameters, you can get a curve, and you can know when exactly we are going to be out of danger. Okay, so next part, let me spend a little bit time on talking about where exactly we get these parameters. Okay, so in SIR model, we talk about the beta and gamma parameters, and let's see where we are exactly getting these parameters. Okay, warning, we'll not spend too much time on this one because it's a dark art of parameter estimation, and I believe, I have a feeling that Professor Mandal is probably going to talk a little bit about those ones. So let's not bother about this. For the time being, let me just introduce the term. So I hope that you recognize the picture from the right-hand side. It's Ralph Fiennes from Harry Potter. He is the Voldemort, the evil reincarnation of the dead or the evil person. Okay, so it's a dark art. You have to basically get trained in dark arts of statistical estimation, of finding errors where there is a missing parts in data reporting, where is a missing parts in surveillance reports. So those parts you have to be aware of. So one quick strategy should be visual estimation. Look at the data, make the model, and plot the model. Now tweak the parameters or change the parameters and see whether they can fit the actual outcome. So this is typically visual estimation. Second is rank regression. So you get the predicted data, you have the actual data, and do a least square fitting. So I hope that people in this August audience, they are aware of this least square fitting. So the basic underlying principle between the least square fitting, that error is kind of uniformly distributed among the mean. Okay, so it's kind of normal distribution among the mean. So if that error is not uniformly distributed, or there is a correlation in the reported data, you have to think about you have to dig a little bit deeper into the statistical modeling, which is called maximum likelihood estimation. You have to talk about the likelihood parameter, something like negative log likelihood or negative binomial likelihood parameters. And finally, the last one is I believe it's the most robust. It's called it's based on Bayesian theorem, and once again, this uses the prior knowledge of the data and prior estimates. Given the prior estimate, how good the current estimate of the parameters. So based on these, we can do a parameter estimation. So let's not spend too much time on these ones, and so we'll just we have to be aware of that. There is an intermediate step that is called data fitting, the parameter fitting. You have to do that part. Now let's talk about the pitfalls in parameter estimation and the problems with parameter fitting. First of all, fitting strategy may not be good. So I gave you 4 strategies actually. One or more of the strategies may not be good for the current situation. So you have to do a trial and error. And second, the actual data may not be very reliable. So that can be poor surveillance or poor reporting. Okay, we have seen numerous examples of that, so we have to be aware of that. And third point, the data itself may have noise. The noise in the sense of chaotic noise or stochastic noise. I specifically put these two terms separately. By chaotic, I mean it deterministic, but the data is kind of oscillating. It doesn't have to be stochastic. Okay, so both of these are kind of noisy. That makes the problem very difficult, but the solution to the problem is kind of using some kind of filtering technique, like 3 days averaging, 4 days averaging, or borrowing some tools from the electrical engineering, like some filters like Kalman filter or something like that. Okay, so right now I'm throwing the names so that you can, if you need, you can just go and look this up. All right. So with those in mind, let me touch on the final topic that we are going to deal with. I hope that I can still spend some time on this one. So all the models basically give one quick metric. There are different metrics also. One notable metric is the basic reproduction number, or R naught. Okay. There are other metrics. In the beginning, our government were using something called the doubling rate. How many days it takes to double, but that's not a very good parameter to talk about. A more reliable parameter is R naught. It also has some problems, but for the time being, let's focus on this one only. So what is R naught? It indicates the expected number of cases directly generated by one case in a population where all individuals are susceptible to infection. And the Australian Health Science Department and some health science department, they specifically add one more condition to this one. And that is, in absence of any deliberate intervention in disease transmission. So if there is no antivirus, or if there is no drug, or there is no containment strategy, one infected people can infect how many other susceptible people? That is your R naught. One infectious people infect R naught susceptible people. That is the basic reproduction number. So people have in the even before the SIR model and all those models, people started using a simple model like this one. I at time t is equal to I naught times R naught to the power t. Okay. So from this, you can see that current number of infection is somewhat related to the future infections. This is a very zeroth order, very fast order approximation, I would say. But based on this, that's where the R naught is useful. So to get the rule of thumb estimation of number of infections. Okay. Do not use it for any other purpose because it will be totally useless. And these are the cases where you can use this one. Number one case is if R naught is less than 1, the disease will die down very soon. If R naught is 1, the disease is under control. There are still infected people, one person infects another, but the epidemic is under control. And if R naught is greater than 1, there is a possibility of outbreak. Okay. So smaller outbreak leads to epidemic. Smaller epidemic, when it becomes bigger, it becomes pandemic. So a rule of thumb for immunization strategy. So this is more important actually. So the proportion of the population that needs to be effectively immunized to prevent sustained spread of the infection has to be larger than 1 minus 1 over R naught. So the common consensus is that our R naught for the COVID-19 is from 2 to 3. Taking a figure of 2, that means 1 minus 1 over 2 is 0.5. That means 50% of the population has to be immunized, or 50% of the people have to acquire herd immunity to stop the spread of the virus. That's where this is useful. Once again, please remember, this is a rule of thumb. The reality may differ. So there is some of the R naught numbers. For H1N1, the R naught is 1.2 to 1.6. Once again, these are average numbers. That's why you have decimal numbers, because you cannot basically put the fraction on people's head, right? You can't have 1.2 people, 1.6 people. It's basically the number in average. The SARS outbreak has 2 to 4 R naught. For MERS, it was 2.5 to 7.2. There's a huge range. For Ebola, it was 1.6 to 2. For COVID-19, it was initially estimated 2 to 2.5. Recent estimate published in Emerging Infectious Diseases. It was published recently in June actually, and it's one of the publication from Center for Disease Control, USA. They are saying that the medium R naught is 5.7. That's a very big number. Okay, so we are not sure about that number. That number may be true for US, but that is what people are estimating. All right. How do you estimate R naught from these models? So typically from R naught, from SIR, R naught is beta over gamma. SIR, it's A times beta over mu plus A times mu plus gamma. Please do not try to remember this. I'm just telling you for this information. So the basic idea is, once again, once you know these parameters, you can estimate the R naught. So this SIR or SEIR model is start from a known value of R naught, and based on that they estimate other parameters. So it's other way around in case of these modeling things. So please keep that in mind. Okay, so let's quickly see some models. So in case of, we'll give a brief introduction of the SIR model. So these are the 4 steps. First of all, we'll set up the workspace, we'll solve the initial value problem or integrate, we'll make predictions, we'll visualize the model, and we'll assume, because we are lazy, that the parameter fitting has already been done. Okay, so now let me tell you the tools for modeling. So the tools that we will be talking about is Python, and it uses the libraries NumPy library and SciPy libraries. And you can use the Google Collaboratory, and this is a basically very useful Python IDE. You do not have to install anything. You just search in internet for Google Colab or Google Collaboratory. If you're logged into the Google, it will open up a notebook. You can type up the code that I'm going to present and run. It will run fantastically. You do not have to install anything on your computer. Okay, so but I am assuming a basic idea with some kind of programming language, and a knowledge of Python is very helpful. So in next 3 slides, I'm going to present a very simple SIR model. Okay, first of all, this is the initial setup. So first 3 lines basically tells Python to load up the necessary libraries to set up the workspace. So first line sets up the numerical library, second part loads up the integration library, third line loads up the plotting library. Okay, so then the total population n, I'm setting up that value as n equal to 1000. So for this toy model, I'm setting the total population 1000, and then initial infected people and initial removed people, I am saying I naught equal to 1, R naught equal to 0. Okay, everyone else is not. So S naught is n minus I10 minus S naught equal to n minus I naught minus R naught. Excuse me. In the third line from the bottom, the beta is 0.2, gamma is 1 divided by 10. So this is the quirky notation of Python. Just a quick introduction. In Python, you can do multiple assignments in one line. So in a single line, I assign beta equal to 0.2, gamma equal to 1 over 10. In the very last line, I am talking about setting up a grid points, basically setting up an array of days. T is my days array. It goes from 0 to 160. So we're talking about 0th day is first day, 160th day is the last day in our modeling effort. So we have 0 day, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, and 160 days. So we want to see projection at the 160th day. So once again, you can change these models according to the thing that you are trying to do, and you can fit the model and see. And so this part is the crux of the model, this SIR model in the differential form. So this is the function, this DEF defines the function, it defines the derivative. It takes as an input an array of S, I, and R. It has all the parameters of at time t, the values of S, values of I, and values of R. And N is the population, total population, beta and gamma are the the parameters. And on the right-hand side, I get the mathematical differential equation. So in the left-hand side, I'm basically computing the time derivative of S, time derivative of I, and time derivative of R, exactly following the equation on the right-hand side. Okay, and this function returns me the ds dt, the time derivative of S, time derivative of I, time derivative of R. So I'm returning them as comma separated arrays. Okay, so if I call this function with these parameters y, t, n, beta, and gamma, it should give me in return the time derivatives. So next part is the solving the initial value problem, or IVP. So initial conditions, we have already set up the initial condition, and we are telling the model, the function model, that y naught, the initial condition is not I naught and R naught. I'm storing them as a single array y naught, and then I'm doing the integration using the scientific integration library from Python, which is called ODE int. ODE stands for ordinary differential equation, INT for integration. So it does a simple Runge-Kutta integration, Runge-Kutta 4.5 level integration. So first argument, I'm giving the first part is, let me quickly check. Okay. First part, I think I missed one line. There is one line needed to compute the derivatives. You have to call this function to get the derivatives. Let's say that that part is called, and we have the derivatives, deriv. Once we have the derivatives, you can put that in the second last equation with the parameters deriv, y naught, time, and arguments as n, beta, and gamma. That will return you the current SIR values given the derivatives and y naught values using simple numerical integration. That's it. So this is the only thing that you do in Python code. And this part is just plotting. Let's not bother about this one. So once you have all these things in different times, you can just plot them. So let's not worry about this part. And this is a picture of the plots that we are going to see. The blue part is the susceptible population, red is infected or infectious, and green is the recovered with immunity. And this is the very plot that you saw in the very beginning. Okay, so this is the picture, a screenshot of the thing that you can do in Google Colab, and you can just put it there and run it. You can see the small white arrow in the left-hand side. You can just click on that and it will run. Okay, let's wrap it up, what we have learned, a quick summary. So I know I have put a lot of stuff on your brain, and let's just open up the brain and see what we have done. We have introduced a bit of statistics of what data we know, how the pandemic is panning out so far. And we have a basic understanding of how the novel coronavirus is affecting us, how it is infecting. We talked about epidemiological modeling, and then we have seen what to look out for in a model. And then we talked about the modeling pitfalls and limitations. And let me end this with the message, take-home message once again from George Box. Essentially, all models are wrong, but some are useful if you can make them. With that, let me end this discussion. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Kousik, for delivering this nice and rather, I would say, engrossing speech. It was kind of enlightening to all of us, and you have actually adequately warned us, given us what is the mechanistic models and what are the logistical models, what are the differences, etc. It was illuminating. I'm talking on my personal behalf. So now I think I should open the session for questions. So let us see. maybe there may be some lag in YouTube because so let's see if the questions are coming. So uh, so I think so. Okay. So I have one question for you. It is Mehak Hafiz Bhatt. I think she was present yesterday also. She said that these models give different estimates. Which model applies effectively for India? Uh, Probably this is a okay. Maybe you can go ahead.
Yeah, actually the thing is that you can apply all the models provided you have take enough precautions. Okay, and you should choose a model which is very flexible. So I believe the model from the Adhikari and co-workers, the model that I presented in more detail, which is age structured contact matrix based SEIR model, that is very much, that has a very much larger scope. So that can be tuned to the Indian context. It has all the flexibilities to be applied to Indian context. So I suggest to go with that.
Okay, ठीक है. So the next question I will see. Okay, these are only thanks. Thank you so much. Very informative, and the technicalities have been beautifully explained. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I think there is a question by Roshan Raj. He says that as India is highly populated nation where birth and mortality rates may not be equal, then it seems that it breaks the one of our assumptions in SIR model. So how can build epidemiological models?
Okay.
Probably this question came while you were talking, still talking. I think maybe something like that.
Yeah, just but let me. It's good to revise. Let me just quickly talk about that. So in the models, there are flexibilities actually to include those different rates with different rate constants. Okay, so you can include those parameters. I just gave a bare bone model of this bare bone version of these models. You can include those parameters because birth rate and death rate are obviously they're different. They has to be accounted for separately. You can include those two terms in ds over dt and dr over dt.
Okay, thanks for answering that question. Next question is from Miss Kalavati Saini. She asks that how CIJ school and CIJ office is different to each other. My means number of affecting people. Matlab, she wants to mean the number of affecting people in these two coefficients, I guess, CIJ and CIJ
Yes.
school, CIJ office.
Yes. So all these are basically age structured. Let me just quickly go over this so that I can tell you what
Okay, we're going back to the slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's not go there. Let's not go there. I just.
Okay.
Okay. I'll talk properly. So you can see that the workplace, the matrices that I talked about, I showed some pictures. Workplace structure and school structure, those matrices are different because in school, those are school-going children. In workplaces, mostly they're adult people. In school structure, you'll see the contact between mostly 25 to 40 age group. They are in close contact with younger people like 6 to 18 years old. So those contacts will be stronger. In workplace, the contacts will be stronger, will be more homogeneous along along diagonals, where we have similar age groups working closely together. So those two structures are quite different actually. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering the question by Ms. Kalavati. Next question is by Rajesh Mohan. He asks that is there any way of taking into account the migration of workers into the model?
Yes, to be frank, actually, we were in the very beginning, the IIT Bhubaneswar modeling group were thinking about that one. at the, because we are located in Odisha, we are thinking about the Odisha. So we took the census data, and in the SEIR, age-structured SEIR model, we included one of those parameters to take into account the migration based on the census data. Yes, it can be done. So that's why I am very much fond of this Adhikari model, because it has so much flexibility that it can account for many other things.
Okay. So thank you for answering Rajesh Mohan's question. And then there is another question by Samir Thakur. He asks that, sir, is there any software or tool available to model and simulate such pandemic?
Yes, I already, I think
You have actually gone at length.
Yeah, at the very end, I talked about the models, and let me just quickly summarize that you do not have to install any software. I'll tell you, I told you one software, which is Google Colab. You can just open up and type the codes, you can run it. And where can you get the codes? You just simply type the SIR model or SEIR model. Lots of people are putting up their codes in open source format in GitHub. You can get the codes and you can start tweaking from there. You do not need any software. You just need Google Colab. It has all the inbuilt tools. Another one is called Jupyter Notebook. It's a Python IDE. It works on the web. You can use those.
Sometimes.
Sorry?
They are very handy. I also use that, these things.
Yeah.
It's very handy, actually.
Yes. Thank you.
So I think there is another question by Rajat Singhal, but I think it is a repeat question. Like, with a diverse country like India with varying control policies, do you think modeling states differently will provide better insight rather than complete model for an entire India? I think you have spoken about it.
Yeah, let me just revise. I think, thank you for putting this up. I think for state-wise, we should actually do the modeling state-wise separately. Okay, although we have very scant data for some of the states, but apart from that, state-wise modeling is better suited for a country like ours. What do you think, Shubhayan?
Well, I was going to do that at 3 o'clock. So thank you for encouraging me.
All right.
So I think you have almost consumed all of your time, and there are only accolades that are coming. So let us wrap this session by please join me online in thanking the speaker again.
Thank you very much. Thank the organizer and coordinators for giving me a chance to speak out. Thank you very much.
The
And all the
pleasure was
audience
all
also.
ours.